Superman versus Deathstroke. How did we even get to this point? Well, what would you do if I told you Lois Lane wanted an interview with the one, the only, the Slade Wilson? Let's get to that story because, oh my god, is it cool. As people run out of Star Labs in Metropolis, the scientist, Dwayne Littles, tells the hostage negotiator that he let everyone go like they wanted. Now he gets what he wants, right? And Captain Sawyer tells him to look. He can't get all excited. And Dwayne shouts he doesn't want to talk to her anymore. Get him what he asked for. Lois Lane! But just as he says that, an explosion goes off and Superman bursts in telling him, I understand that she's a little busy. Maybe I can help. Dwayne stumbles back as he hovers his hand over the button, shouting, don't come any closer. One press of this and the entire building will blow. Superman tells him, I know you don't want to die. Just like I know how you don't want your coworkers to die, but why would you want to talk to Lois Lane? And Dwayne tells him it's because she's an honest reporter and she'll tell the world what's going on. He then points into the lab stating that they managed to produce something that could power the entire city, but the people in charge here want to use it for weapons. His research helped develop this. He gave them everything. Last week his wife left him and took their baby. And now he's got nothing left. As the police run in and aim their guns at Dwayne, Superman motions for them to stand down. And he tells Dwayne, I can understand that feeling. Just surrender to the authorities and we'll make sure that you're safe. Dwayne looks back at the police and he says, you should just let them kill me. You'd be doing me a favor. Meanwhile, back in Bolivia, Lois and Jimmy set out to speak with Carlos Gomez, the man who is known as the Gravemaker. He killed his competition and he's become the biggest drug lord in South America, and he wants an interview because that's the kind of narcissist that he is. Except as the two pull up, they see a mound of bodies, and among them is Carlos. Lois runs over to check the camera that Carlos is holding and sees that it was none of the men who killed him, it was the man, Deathstroke. Later in Metropolis, Lois tells Perry that it's just the kind of story that they need. They need to interview Slade Wilson. Perry says that he's not sure. Isn't that, kind of dangerous? And Lois tells him that that's why she's going. She needs to interview Deathstroke. Perry rubs his head, stating, on the other hand, it would make for one hell of a story. And Lois tells him, great! She's already got some promising leads. He won't regret this. A short while later at the diner, Clark tells Lois that she's putting her life at risk. He's fought Slade. He's no joke. At least let him come along and Lois stops him, telling him the world needs to see Slade for who he is, and having Superman as a bodyguard is a surefire way of luring him out. Clark sighs and hands her a stun gun, stating, you should at least take this. This one's courtesy of Star Labs. Just promise not to hesitate to use it if needed. She takes it and tells him that she promises. Over in Prague, Lois makes her rounds following the leads up that she has, which aren't going so well. As she steps into the alleyway for another potential lead, a man appears with several bodyguards saying that his name is Cetus, and it would seem that they are both looking for the same elusive man. Lois plays it off, stating that she has no idea what he's talking about, and Cetus's guards pull out knives and state, we shall work together, or this won't end pleasantly. She grabs the stun gun from her coat and shocks the closest bodyguard and then gets ready to hit the next. But before she can, Superman flies in, melting the knife, stating, I'm sorry to interrupt. After chasing off the men, Lois asks, what the hell are you doing? Are you following me? And he tells her, of course not. That stun gun sends off a signal that only I could hear when activated. I just knew that you would be in trouble. Lois says that is very sweet, in a way. But she is trying to do her job here, so go back home and she'll be there when this is finished. He flies up into the air, telling her, just be careful, Lois. As she walks off, a voice calls out to her, asking if she's Lois Lane, the world-famous reporter. She asks if he's Slade, and he asks, why are you looking for him? And you better be truthful. Lois tells him that she wants to interview him for the Daily Planet. Those men before were looking for him as well, but she refused. And Slade tells her, right, now they're following you. Lois looks back to see the men from before, and without a word, Slade leaps in with his swords. As he fights, there's something that Lois notices. Though Slade is killing the attackers, he's protecting the young boy that was caught in the crossfire. And as the last man falls, Cestus appears firing a crossbow, which Slade easily defects. When Lois looks back, she says that he just disappeared. And Slade tells her, he does that. He'll bring more warriors, so we better find cover. Later that night at an undisclosed location, Lois asks who were those men. And Slade says that they were bad men who have a grudge against him. And that's all she needs to know. She then asks, does it ever get tiring? The killer for hire profession? And he asks, is that really what you're here for? And Lois takes out a pad and pen, stating, I told you before, I want an interview. So first question, do you enjoy killing? He says, that emotion doesn't usually enter unless as an act of vengeance. Something personal. Lois asks, so it's usually cold-blooded then? And Slade tells her, it's almost routine. Muscle memory kicks in. Sometimes it's over so quickly. You always catch a glimpse of it with your eyes, the look of death. And Lois then asks, so can you recall the faces of everyone that you've killed? And Slade says, not all of the faces, but I remember them and how they died. I've seen enough death to not desire it for myself, and when it finally comes, I'll go out fighting. She asks, what about the men in Bolivia? Was that a job or vengeance? And Slade tells her, that's enough questions from you. Before leaving, he says, actually, I have a question. Back in the alleyway, when you were threatened, the big blue Boy Scout arrived to save the day. Does he love you? Before she can answer, an arrow hits the side of the building and Slade says, I'll engage them so you can slip out, but remember, predators are around, never run. The next day at the Daily Planet, Perry reads the headlines on Deathstroke and says, that is sure one hell of a story. Go ahead and take the weekend off, Lois. As she leaves, Clark calls stating that she should hurry home. John and him are getting ready to give her lots of hugs, but as she goes to respond, she suddenly stops and a voice tells her, hello. She asks what he's doing here in Metropolis, and the voice says, I'm afraid it's you that I'm after. And he fires the gun. In a blink of an eye, Superman appears to shield Lois, and Slade tells him, it's about time you showed up. What took you so long? Clark's eyes glow red with anger, and he tells Slade, get out of my city. Slade tells him, it's nothing personal, Boy Scout, strictly business. And Clark melts the gun, asking, why would you try and kill Lois? Who hired you to do this? Slade begins to ask, do you really think? But before he can finish, Superman grabs him by the throat, demanding, who? And Slade asks, or what? Are you gonna kill me? What about the world-famous Superman moral code? He punches into Slade's armor, disrupting an energy field, and quickly turns back to check on Lois. Then he whispers, you need to get far away from here. Run. And as Lois turns to run, Slade tells her, remember what I said. Never run when there's a predator around. He takes out a staff and he points it at Superman as a stream of fire shoots into his neck. Slade then tells himself, Superman may be from Krypton, but his emotional responses are very human. As Superman beats back the energy field, Slade says, it must be frustrating, knowing that you could just burn me into the ground with your heat vision or fly me into space and suffocate me. Superman stops mid-swing, telling him, that would make me a killer, just like you. And Slade takes the chance to punch into Superman. And Superman tells him, the last time we fought, I wasn't angry, but now you've made me very mad. Superman jumps up, charging into Slade, throwing him across the street into the nearby building. And as Superman walks up, watching the armor short out, he says, it looks like I just broke your new suit. Slade tosses the grenade at a car, stating that the games are just about to start, Boy Scout, and now you're gonna have to play by the rules if you want to save your life. The grenade goes off, throwing the car into the air, and Superman catches it, telling the person inside, just hang on. But as he looks back, Slade is already gone. And a few days later, Perry knocks on Lois's office door, stating that he's gonna need her to get down to the docks. There's a fire happening near a propane storage facility. A short while later, she arrives on the scene and begins to question the firefighters, and one of them says that the fire looks suspicious in nature, but he's gonna have to ask her to step back. Just behind her, Superman tells her, like I told you before, I'm not going to be letting you out of my sight as long as Deathstroke is still around. He then blows a gust of wind into the waters, creating a wave to put out the fires. As the smoke begins to clear, that's when Superman sees Deathstroke. And he tells him, I told Lois that I would see her soon. I'm a man of my word. Superman looks back to see that Lois isn't there, and he shoots over to Slade, grabbing him by the throat, shouting, where is she? Slade tells him, maybe dead, maybe she will be soon. Maybe it's all up to you. Superman fights the urge to strangle Slade, and he says, that's what I call self-control. I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to rip off my head, but if you did, you would never see her again. Another explosion goes off, and Slade says, that was just a service tank, but when the flames reach the high-capacity tanks in about 90 seconds, there won't be anything left. He then grabs Lois and holds a gun to her head, telling Superman, I know you're fast, but so is my trigger finger. Maybe you can take me out in the millisecond that it'll take for the bullet to penetrate her head. Maybe not. As Superman says, what do you want? And Slade says, it's not about that, it's about what Superman wants. Do you want Lois here dead or alive? Superman shouts, alive! And Slade says, then the next question is, what are you willing to do about it? Clark's eyes begin to glow red and he says, I could let you walk out of here. And Slade says, it's about what it's going to take to make you act. Holding Lois's dead body in my arms, will that make you do something? Slade cuts the gag and he tells Lois, go on, tell Superman you want to live. And she tells him, you can go to hell. Slade says, you could bet on that, but that's a bit off topic. You better say goodbye to Lois, Superman. Then the high-capacity tanks explode and Slade jumps back, still holding on to Lois. Later, as she begins to wake up, she sees Slade standing there and she asks, so this is where you finished the job? And he tells her, we're just about done, and you get points for the spirit. Lois reaches for the stun gun in her pocket and Slade tells her, I'm gonna miss you. I saw that device back in Prague. It sends a homing signal that only Superman can hear, right? He then looks back and says, well, you better use it now. Outside, Superman scans the waters over and over until he hears the signal. In a matter of seconds, he rushes in, grabbing Lois, asking if she's all right, and she says that she's alive, which makes no sense. Superman asks, where's Deathstroke? And Lois says that he's gone, but he left a message. Superman looks over at the wall and it says, game over, Boy Scout. Lois asks what that could mean. And Superman says it was a game to test me, to see how far I'd go to protect someone that I care about. But was it Deathstroke's game, or did someone put him up to it? Elsewhere, Slade rides up in an armored vehicle stating, "It was never in his eyes, that look. If he actually did want to kill me, I wouldn't be here." The person driving says that he was never in any real danger. The enhanced power coil that they gave him for compensation should have allowed him to be protected from that heat vision. And Slade tells them, "Yeah, well, it crapped out during the street brawl. I was defenseless at the docks, but I always finished the job, even for you." Amanda Waller says she just needed to see how far Superman could be pushed, in case she needs to do some pushing herself. And there you have it, proof that if he has the right tools, Deathstroke could in fact beat Superman. Not really proof, no one really won this fight. Deathstroke just kind of proved that Superman has human tendencies, which is what we like about Superman. But anyway, it was a fun little filler story. Not the most epic story like you would have assumed, but it was a fun little 2-issue filler story bridging the gap between two storylines happening in Superman right now. Now, we're going to be dealing with Lex turning evil again and finally getting some history on the Lex turning into Darkseid thing. So go check that out at Comicsology or your local comic book shop. Follow me on Twitter to get single tweet reviews where I try to condense my thoughts about every issue of comic books that I read into about 140 characters or less. And subscribe to this channel to keep up to date as to what is happening with Marvel Legacy, DC Rebirth, and your favorite comics.